Hey there, I'm Aaron. Get ready because this is Camp Peculiar, a channel for AI artists who want to make comics, graphic novels, or really any kind of visual storytelling endeavor, project, mission, quest, if you will. I write an art prompt, the fun, the fantastic, and wonder-filled web comic Camp Peculiar, which you can find over on Webtoons, entirely AI art-backed. Go over there and check it out. Well, you don't even need to, because today we're going to do an episode, we're going to do an issue of Camp Peculiar from scratch. And so I wanted to take you start to finish creating a webcomic using AI art. So join me for this depth of knowledge and speed of delivery, and we're already into it right now. Let's talk about step one. So here we are at step number one, at least the one that I start with, and it's very important, tied for importance with step number two, and that is step number one, the idea. What is this story going to be about? What is this comic going to be about? Just this issue, maybe not the whole thing. I am interested in your grand vision. I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. But right now, for just this issue, what are you trying to accomplish? More times than not, people try to take on too much in one episode or one issue. I'm guilty of that myself. And Webtoons has a specific style, which isn't always set up like a comic book. It's not always like whatever, 27, 30-something pages, heavily paneled. Webtoons tend to be a little more flowy. There tends to be lots of space between panels, which I don't observe on this particular episode, but they tend to be less filled with panels and more filled with sort of scrolling being the mechanism by which you advance the story instead of panels. So I think all you need to do for Webtoons is come up with your character and put them in relatable situations. If those situations have mystery or excitement or danger or conflict, maybe even better. But that's what we're going for in episode one. That brings us to step number two. Once you have your sort of idea for what you want to have happen, is the script. And I wrote the script for this particular episode in a program called Superscript, which I will do a video on. You can write it in Google Docs. You can write it on your hand. You can write it on a Post-it note. You don't have to write it all. You can just do it as you go. So I'm a bit of a planner when it comes to writing scripts. I like to read through it. I like to have an idea of about how many pages it is. And honestly, here's the thing. I don't write the script in order to know what I'm going to do. I write the script in order to know what I'm not going to do. So if I have a script, then I can force myself to stick to it. If I don't, it tends to balloon and go crazy. So maybe the script exists so that you know not what to do instead of knowing what to do. So this is Superscript. It's a comic-specific writing program. The benefits really for me are the page and panel generation and then the character dialogues. You can see up at the beginning there, you can add the characters that you have in this particular script, and then when you type the first letter of their name, it has sort of an autocomplete feature. And then you type capital P to do a new page, and you can do lowercase p to do a new panel, and then you end any line in a semicolon to do a character. It's just a really fast way to generate a script. When you're all done writing your script in Superscript, you can export it as a PDF, and it has lots of export options, and those export options change the way that the text is formatted, the page numbers are formatted, and the dialogue. It also adds some stats and useful information to the PDF about how many panels are on this particular page and how many words of dialogue there are. So step number three for me is generating the characters. And maybe I wouldn't do this, I probably would, but this is for me especially important in AI because I don't know exactly what I'm going to get. I'm not going to do any of the drawing, and I don't know what MidJourney or whatever you're using for your AI art generation. I don't really know what it's going to give back. And so maybe this idea, this thing I'm seeing in my head, maybe it's not going to be possible, or it's just going to take too much work and be too cumbersome to work with. To actually take out on a comic adventure. In this particular case, I went ahead and typed in what I thought was a good prompt to get back an Acorn cartoon character, and it was one of those times where first return, first set of form images back, I was like, okay, this is going to work. Super excited there. So spend some time in MidJourney, especially getting the style prompt down, because you're going to use that style prompt with everything. You want, generally speaking, you want a consistent look to the way your art looks throughout your particular comic strip. And so you want to spend some time nailing the styles down. I have a video or two on styles, but what are the 3 or 4 words you're going to put at the end of every prompt that are going to kind of try to keep it together in the style? And then you're looking to generate a character and then generate lots of variations of that character before you bring it into Photoshop and clean it up. So this whole topic of character sheets could get its own video, and maybe it'll get its own training series because it is in depth. And I also think that it's optional. You can go straight from the MidJourney app where it gives you all your images. You can just copy it from there and go straight into your Photoshop or whatever you're using, your Clip Studio Paint, your Paint Clipper, Studio Clipper. You can go straight into that or Procreate right out of MidJourney and start building your comic in there. You don't need to write the script in a word processor like I did. That was optional just for sort of reference. And you don't need to build a character sheet. But if you're going to have a recurring character, a character that's going to show up on lots and lots of panels and drive the plot, it's a very dialogue-driven comic strip, then having a character sheet is helpful. And I will do a whole video series, or like I said, a separate training series somewhere on how I developed character sheets. And then you'll see in a second here when we do the art that it kind of devolves into a buffet, or evolves into a buffet, where you can mix and match the different elements to make a particular expression or pose, and then just bring that into your comic. Hey, that takes us to step 4, generating what I call the B-roll, or all the supporting assets. This is going to be like scenery, different objects that you're going to need in your scene. I tend to do that all at once, again, using the same style prompt that I would. I'm looking for establishing shots, things that I can show context, where is this taking place, and then start to zoom in on those things to show the specific setting of a particular piece of dialogue or something like that. This one's pretty easy. It takes place in a tree, so I was just looking for a cool oak tree, and then it takes place on a branch. So that was pretty much it, and that's all the art that I generated. I tend to keep mine in the MidJourney app and then copy it, put it on a new document in Photoshop, then clean it up and then bring it into the comic from there. The next step, number 5, and the least fun part of all of it, is adding the dialogue from that script into the comic. I like to see how things are laid out on the page. I put the script next to it on the right and then just kind of copy and paste or type it in, and I'm just trying to get the dialogue, no speech bubbles yet, just the dialogue about where it's going to go. So step number 6, kind of an important step, I go ahead and make groups that have my art folder, my speech folder, and my speech bubbles folder in Photoshop. Now, however many pages are on the script, that's how many folders I make. And then I go ahead and put the dialogue in those particular folders. A couple things you need to keep in mind, though, for Webtoon specific to laying out your pages and your panels. Let's start with the panels first. First, again, a lot of the comics on Webtoons are more scroll driven. There's more of a flow to them. There's a lot of white space. There's a lot of empty space in between things. They're not as much panel driven. That's because on an iPhone, it's kind of hard to track panels. They're kind of small, and the text then inside them is also small. So try to allow some space between your scenes. I don't do that. I like the comic style. I like the way it looks, so I don't do a great job of that. But next thing you want to keep in mind is that your logo, the logo or the title information from your comic, should start about 375 pixels down. When somebody looks at your Webtoon webcomic on their phone or the iPad or even the web browser, there's like a control bar at the top that allows you to go forward and back or to the next thing you subscribe to. And it takes up some real estate. And that amount of real estate turns out to be about 375 pixels. So I start the logo below that, then below the logo, the socials and your episode issue information. And then you'll have about a half a page or less to do something on that first page, which I call the intro page. And you can use that to do establishing dialogue or an establishing shot, or you can just put more credit information, all your friends, like who you want to give a shout out to, your patrons, your Patreons, all that stuff. Last thing to keep in mind about Webtoons is that I run a border around all of my pages, including at the bottom. And since Webtoons takes 800 by 1280 images and sort of stitches them together in their viewer, if you have a full border at the bottom and then a full border at the top, you're actually going to get double the border height where two pages join. So I keep a little folder in Photoshop called borders, and in there I can turn on a half height border or a full height border. Then we go into laying out the art, which for me, that starts with the characters. I get the character from the character sheet, as you'll see me do. I put together what sort of expression I think the character should have, merge that layer, copy it off, put it in there, and then reset the character sheet. And I just go page by page, starting at page 1, setting up the characters, then setting up all the additional art and scene art, and then sort of move text around. Normally, I go back into the speech bubbles after that. In this particular one, you see I'm blending step 8, add bubbles, add the speech bubbles. I'm doing that at the same time. And then when I'm all done, I'll go back and nudge all the points around and move them around so that they make sense. For me, adding speech bubbles is just a matter of using the pen tool. And then I try to give one character just straight boxes that aren't rounded, and then the opposing character a more rounder box to at least add some distinction. And I'll do a video on all the different ways you can use text bubbles to distinguish between two characters. But that was step 8, add bubbles, which means we have had an idea. We wrote a script. We generated a bunch of artwork for it. We developed characters. We started a new Photoshop document or something and set up some borders and made sure that the logo was 375 pixels from the top, added a bunch of artwork, added a bunch of characters, put them in where they go, and then put little speech bubbles around them if you want that. That's even optional too. Most of this stuff is optional. Last step then is to export all of your pages. So you just go in and you can either do quick save as PNG or save for legacy and then do a PNG or a JPEG. But here's the thing for Webtoons. This is the sort of thing you want to look out for is I do the downsampling here because my image is at double the width and double the height. I use the little settings box here in the export options of Photoshops to go from 6 Photoshops, like it's plural. I got multiple Photoshops. I changed the 1600 to 800. Export that out, call it P1, page 1, whatever you want to do so I know where they all are. Then you bring them into Webtoons, add a new episode, put a title in there, generate the thumbnail. I upload all of the images at once and then hit publish or schedule. And there you go, start to finish. That's how I build a Webtoons and what I try to think about when I'm making an episode of Camp Peculiar for Webtoons. I hope you found that helpful. If you do, like and subscribe. Tons more videos coming on using AI art in storytelling. Hey, and if you're working on an AI art supported webcomic on Webtoons or any other platform or working on something, let me know about it in the comments section below. I would love to know about it and check it out. Until next time, thanks for watching, and I will see you soon.